Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. My name is Zakaria Suleiman and I will be your host today with my colleague Pierrick Deleuze. Today we are going to speak about automated data entry into Laserfiche, and the webinar will be around 45 minutes. Your speakers will be Bart and Sam, and maybe Sam, you can introduce yourself.
Yes, thanks, Zach. Hi, guys. My name is Sam, and I oversee the development of this Laserfiche connector. And I've been with Iris for about 6 years now. I started out as an engineer and am now a senior consultant.
Yep. And my name is Bart Balliger. I am responsible for business development within Iris. I am, let me think, roughly 10 years at Iris. Time flies. I have a technical background. I studied a long time ago robotics, but most important is that for the last 20 years, I'm active in business process automation, in document management, and of course, into data capture.
So maybe Bart, you can move to the next slide. Yes, you can ask your questions via the questions tab on the right-hand side. And you will be also be able to replay the webinar and download the presentation of today later on our website. And now I would like to give the stage to Bart to start the presentation.
Thank you, Zakaria. So the goal of today is to talk about Iris data capture, and Laserfiche. I will first talk a little bit in general about data capture and Laserfiche, what it means, what we can do. From there, we'll go to what is the added value that we offer to Laserfiche, and then we will give you a live demonstration with two different scenarios. And at the end, of course, there will be a Q&A in case you have questions if you would like to know more. So let's start immediately. Data capture for Laserfiche. You all know Laserfiche. Laserfiche is a document management system. You are going to manage documents, data inside Laserfiche. You are going to do this to easy retrieve documents. You are going to do this because you would like to do some process automation and you have some workflows within Laserfiche. But of course, before you can start using Laserfiche, you need to have all the information inside your system. And the more information you have, the easier it is to retrieve the document, the more options you have if we are going to talk about workflows. So what you could do and what a lot of companies are doing, you can always manually, of course, encode this information inside Laserfiche. For instance, here you see we have a document, you have a W4, which you would like to have in Laserfiche. You can type it over, but this is exactly where we are going to offer our added value. That's in the middle, the source of the document and your Laserfiche. We are going to automate taking the document, bringing it into Laserfiche. And we are going to do this in multiple steps. First thing what we are going to do is we are going to identify which is the right template to use within Laserfiche, because Laserfiche can work with different templates and each template have a different structure of metadata of indexes. So in this case, for instance, what happens, this is a document that you've received by email or which you have in a directory or which is a paper that you have put on the scanner, and we will automatically identify this as a W4. Due to this, we know which is the metadata that you need and which is the location where you need this document within Laserfiche. This is what we call classification. The next step because we know the template, we know now what the metadata is that you would like to have, and we are going to do the indexation. We are going to read the document, capture all the relevant, all the needed information for Laserfiche outside the document. So like you see, for instance, in this case, we need to know the document type, which is coming from the classification, the year, the first name, the last name, and the social security number of the employee. And this we are going to capture automatically from the document. After the indexation, we are going to create a universal document. Universal, I mean, source can be all kind of documents. It can be a Word document, it can be a JPEG, it can be a TIFF. What we are going to do is we are going to normalize everything to PDF. We will also compress this PDF file so that the size that it takes within your system is the minimum what's necessary. I'm talking about 60 kilobytes, 100 kilobytes for one page in color. And you might say today with storage, this is not so important. If you start with a digital archive, the goal is to keep documents for 20 years, for 30 years. I even seen business cases where we talk about more than 100 years. And of course, you can imagine year after year, storage size will take up, and compression can be very important over here. Also, if you would like to share a document, send it by email, just have the document as small as possible. Makes it easy, makes it comfortable to work with. We will also do a full text OCR, which is different from indexation. So you have first all the indexes, but beside the indexes, we will create a text layer inside the PDF so that you are always able to retrieve a document as well on any word used in the content. Also, if you share this document with someone else and you have no longer the connection with the Laserfiche, you still have all the PDF, all the text information inside the PDF. This is the document creation, and from there we have a last step, which is the export or the import into Laserfiche, where based on all the metadata, based on the document type, we will define which is the right folder to store it. If the folder doesn't exist, we will create in Laserfiche for you the folder. We will also dynamically create the file name. Typically, if you have a scanned document, you will have a file name like scan001.jpg, which doesn't say anything. But if you look here on my print screen, you see that the name of the document is W4 Norris Chuck. You know immediately what kind of document this is based on the file name. We will also, during the export, add tags to the document if necessary to be used inside Laserfiche. What I explained over here are the four most important steps of taking data automatically and bringing into Laserfiche. If I go to the complete process, there is of course a first step in front, which is the import. And import, we can grab documents, we can grab information from multiple sources. It might be an email box that you have, and then we can automatically read out those emails and bring it in. Bring an email in. We can work with the email content, with the body of the email, but we can also work with the attachments. For instance, if you are going to process invoices, then the most logic is that the attachment is the real document, is the invoice which is attached to the email. So we work with the attachments and we work with the body depending on what you need in your business case. We can read out from folders, and you can, of course, always scan a document behind. After the import, it goes into the automation, like I explained with the previous slide. And then a very important part after the automation is the integrity check. Integrity means validate if the information that we've captured is correct. And this is a kind of double validation. It's not only did we read the document correctly, but also is the information on the document correct? But because it might be that we captured correctly the information, but that the source is wrong. So there is a kind of double check over there. And this check, you can also see in two different steps. The first step is an automatically validation based on validation rules. For instance, you have an amount, well, then it's logic that an amount is a number and not a word inside. It might be that you have a social security number. You can do a lookup in a database to make sure that the social security number exists. If there is a match with a name, you can do cross-reference checks. We've read multiple fields. If all those fields in relation to each other are okay, we have an invoice with a total amount, with a netto amount, or with a tax amount. Well, the tax plus the netto should equal the total amount. So these are all checks that we can do just to make sure that the data that we've captured is the right data before we send it to Laserfiche and before you can start the automation within Laserfiche. Imagine for whatever reason we are not able to validate, or the validation says I'm not sure if the data is correct, then there will be in our solution a user interaction that the user can do a correction on this data. He can not only do a correction, by the way, he can also enrich the data. Time to time, you need in your process information which is not on the document. And by default, you need to have a user adding this information to the document. So you have the choice to do this directly from the validation step within Iris. You will see this if Sam is going to, when Sam gives his presentation. Why is this important? Like this, you are able to do everything from one user interface. You do all the data collection, correction, validation from one user interface. From there, we send it to Laserfiche, and there the automation, the storage starts within Laserfiche. So I often get the question, what kind of documents can you handle? And the very simple answer is we can automate any kind of document. And if I would like to go a little bit more in detail, then we talk first of all about structured documents. Structured documents, that means that the information that you need is always on the same position. Best example of a structured document is a form. Whatever form you have to fill in a form, and due to the fact that you know where you have to write what, the data is always on the same position. This is a structured document. Next to structured, we have semi-structured, and semi-structured knows that means that we know what kind of information that we need. We only don't know where it is positioned on the document. A good example over here is an invoice. We all know on an invoice, there's an invoice date, there's an invoice number, there is a supplier, there are some amounts on it. But every supplier is using his own layout, his own look and feel of the invoice. So we don't know where it is. And these kind of documents we can handle as well. And we handle them where structured documents are typically handled based on templates, a template where you design on which position you find documents. For semi-structured documents, we don't use templates. Templates would mean, again, for the example of invoices, that you create a template for each supplier and change this template for each supplier each time a layout changes, which is something which is unmanageable. So we have technology to make sure that we can work template free. And next to semi-structured documents, we have unstructured documents where, again, we are going completely template free, try to identify the information which is needed. For instance, if you are doing case management and you have a document which you need to add to the case, you don't know upfront what kind of document, you don't know which information is all on it, but you know that you need to do a matching with a certain case, so you can try to find references to put this document in the right case to start the automation within Laserfiche from there. If I say all kind of documents, does that mean that everything will be fully automatically? Of course, everything depends on the quality and the readability of the documents, but that's why we have this integrity check in the middle. And with the integrity, with the user interaction together, that makes us very comfortable saying that you will have 99.9% of data good into Laserfiche, knowing that there is some manual validation in the middle for the documents where needed. How do we do this? I will not go too deep into detail because it become immediately very technical, and also I can talk 2-3 hours about this. But basically, we are going to use all the information that we have available of the document. If there are barcodes on the document, based on barcodes, we can make decisions. We can retrieve information. We can use the document structure. If a document looks always like in the same layout, we can use this to identify the document. We can do the same with the data. If you need to retrieve a social security number, you don't know where it is, but you know the structure of a social security number. So you're able to check every word, everything which is written on the document. Is this a social security number? Yes, no. You can match this with databases that you have to optimize the recognition. And of course, we can work with fixed text. If we find the word invoice on a document, then we could make the logic, this is an invoice, for instance. Basically, we are combining 3 principles. The first principle is rule-based. That means we have all this information, reference data, barcode, all the text information, etc., and we are able to define rules. When is an index valid? When is a document a certain document type? When is a certain word the value of a certain index? This is rule-based. We can create those rules within the system. We have a second principle which we use, and this is based on artificial intelligence. For instance, if you have a lot of different document types and you need to do the classification behind, instead of manually try to identify and create all those rules, you can just feed the system with a lot of documents as examples. And then due to artificial intelligence, the system is capable of doing the analyze on its own and create the logic for you so that you don't have to create all those rules. That's the second principle. And then there's a third principle, which is a learning mechanism, which is also used when we are already in production. So if the system is, for whatever reason, not able to read an index, not able to classify the document, he will ask an operator, a user, for assistance, but the system is capable of learning of what this user is doing. So if a user says, well, this information for this specific document found over here, the system will remember, and next time it will use what the user did. So you make the system smarter during usage. Up to now, what I discussed is pure technology and features functionality of our technology. How this technology is used depends on the solution that you are going to use. And we have 3 different families of solutions. We first of all have what we call the IDR, and the IDR is an SDK. That means that's an SDK which you can integrate inside your own development. So you're writing your own application, you can use the IDR, and by this you are using all the power of Iris integrated in your application under the hood. Nobody will even see that there is Iris involved. It will be your application. Of course, you don't need to be a developer of applications to use our technology. Therefore, we have 2 other families of solutions, where the first one is Iris PowerScan, and Iris PowerScan is a client application. That means it's something which you install on a PC. You can connect a scanner to this PC, And from there, you can start scanning. You don't need a scanner. You can also start importing for emails, do the data capture, and send everything over to Laserfiche. And next to Iris PowerScan, our client solution, we have Iris Extract, which is our server platform, actually client server platform, where the big advantage is that due to the fact that we have a server, there is offline processing. We can have much more power behind. We have much more scalability. So we can have multiple users using one central system behind. So if we talk about the added value that Iris data capture is offering, then this is on 3 different levels. The first level is during the implementation of your business process automation. What we have is a platform which is very easy to configure, which is scalable. So you will have a very quick integration, which makes it easier, which makes it, of course, uh, cheaper to do implementations, and also much easier to make changes inside your configuration. So this is a first value that you have. But of course, during the usage of the platform, due to the automation and due to the optimized user interface and user performance that we have, you will have direct savings. You will have reduced overhead. Again, you are saving dollars over here, and you will also have a faster throughput, which might be important just to speed up the overall processing. Sorry, I'm using a mic which is switching off after half an hour, and this is a sign that I'm talking too long. So, sorry. Direct savings, faster throughput to have the total process faster. And then there is also indirect savings, because we are going to work on the quality of the data. You will have less errors inside the system, and less errors means that you are easier going to retrieve documents, and of course you don't have costs in doing correction of errors afterwards. So these are the 3 different blocks where you will have savings by using Iris data capture. As promised, Sam will give you a demonstration. You will actually demonstrate 2 different document flows. The first one that he is going to present are HR documents, which we will process with Iris PowerScan. Remember, this is the client application. So the total flow is there will be some documents on the scanner. Sam will scan them. We will first do a classification, because although we know already it's HR, inside those HR documents, we would like to know which document it is. Once we know which document, we will do an indexation, the user will do the validation, and it will be exported. And due to the fact that this is PowerScan, which is done by a user, you will see that the whole process from start scan up to the validation and from there export will be done real time, and where everything will be in front of the eye of the user. By the way, I'm saying that PowerScan is a user application, means that it has to be installed on a desktop, but there is also some automation if the validation is not necessary and the import is coming from a directory. You could also use PowerScan to have a complete unattended flow from one workstation onto Laserfiche. The second scenario that Sam has prepared for you is one where we are using Iris Extract, our client server environment, where we will have invoices received by email in an email box. They will be imported, the invoices will be read, and then we will validate the result. And after the validation, they will be exported also to Laserfiche, of course. And where you see that the big difference is that the first part of the workflow over here is done by the server unattended. So the demo and what you as a user will notice starts directly with the validation. Sam, are you ready for the demo?
Yes, yes, I am.
Then I give
All
the
right.
word to you.
All right, thanks, Bart. So our connector is going to it's going to write it writes into anywhere in your repository, or create new places inside of your repository. It's also going to be able to write to any field, any of the type of different Laserfiche fields that we have, which also include things like lists, and it's going to write any type of document that we're working with or trying to create into Laserfiche as well. Our connector does use the Laserfiche SDK. That's how it was created. So we are using the Laserfiche API, and today we're going to show you examples of actually creating a couple different types of documents. So we're going to do some PDFs and some TIFFs going into the repository. Now, what we're going to do within these two demos is also touch on areas in the workflow or in the repository that use a workflow and that don't use a workflow. The first example is going to just be sticking with no workflows, just an area in human resources. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to come in here, and I want to just show you the area that we're going to be working with. So let's say that I am working in human resources, and while we only have a couple main entry folders here, there could be a lot of different subfolders, and this area can actually be quite time consuming when trying to save and place things a certain way. So we need to quickly process incoming documents and organize them so that they can be easily found. I just want to point out that this is where automated entry can really help standardize and centralize this for you. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take some random documents, and I do have some employees, and with these employees, we're going to be just monitoring the different years in which the documents or paperwork pertains to for easy organization. And we're also going to make this area here. We're going to show you. I'm going to show you here where we have maybe some job offers, and we're going to see that it's going to fall right in place with either new applicants under construction or the job offers to which we're trying to create. Now, the way I'm intending to use this is to have Iris help me out with which type of job offer, which group and department this is going to go in. So let's go ahead and switch over to PowerScan and take a look and see how this all works. The classification is quite simple, and the bringing in is going to be relatively simple here. As Bart mentioned, this could certainly run in as a background process, but I'm going to go ahead and just pull these in. Like I said, the classification and indexing actually is relatively quickly. We do see over here to our right that the fields, the index values have been populated. If there were any exceptions that needed to be validated, this document logo here would have a little exclamation mark notifying us that there needs to be some sort of interaction. Everything seems fine. And you'll notice that we have some different, we have evaluations and offers. So what I'm going to do is take these documents here and just process them out into our Laserfiche cloud repository. So while that's creating these, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. So we're going to go into to see what we have here. I know that we had some job offers, and we also had some evaluation forms. So let me just click on this. Let's see if we had, I believe we have a couple different software architectures. Great. So here's our mark with our information. And of course, you can download this TIFF and take a look at it later. But as you see, everybody's going where they need to go. I'm going to pull out from here and hop over to our employees. I was using just some older documents, so we have our 2009. And as you'll see, we have all of our different employees for this year, paperwork regarding them, nice and organized, and I'm able to find the document, my evaluation form, which I was looking for, okay? So that's going to be how we can help centralize this information as things are coming in to kind of help control the chaos that it is involving where things need to go and assorting those with the correct indexes. So now let's take a look at our second example. And in this example, we're going to be working with invoices, and we're going to show you how Iris can help improve already existing workflows inside of your repository relating to invoices. So I only have one job here, and this job is actually going to be a batch of a couple different invoices. Okay, so when looking at this, we're going to find our index values again over to the right side of the screen. Our line items are going to be found just below. And in the middle of the document here, we do have the first page in which we're looking at the content. Over to our left is going to be a document tree in which I'm able to use this to navigate and see which pages are being worked on and what we're currently working with. You'll also notice when clicking into fields how Iris is going to go ahead and just show you where things are being captured from. So, and when it comes to invoices, I'm not going to spend too much time on these particular fields. But what I do want to kind of cover here is you'll notice that we do provide all of the information that you're looking for automatically, right? Supplier and vendor, billing, shipping information, and even the line items, which are kind of displayed in an unorganized, unstructured fashion. Okay, so and we do see that this has a PO to it, which we've captured as well. Okay, so in this scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to be taking these documents and we're going to be bringing them over to, let's just go into our finance area. So let's just say that we have inside of our accounts payable, we have two areas for our invoices. We have ones that are going to be approved, or ones that are pending, and some sort of workflow needs to take place whenever a document hits here, so the correct people within that workflow are notified at the appropriate time. So by using Iris on the front end side of it, what we want to be able to do is kind of help speed this part up. So let's just say that anything that's under 500 should be immediately approved, and anything over does need to go into the pending where it then gets reviewed. So within these documents, what we've got here is, I mentioned all of these capturing fields, but we also have some areas like where there's maybe information that's not on the document, right? So like, understanding that this is a US currency, and we also have that this is not approved. We just talked about that, but we know that this is over $500, so we know that this one's going to not be approved. When it comes to that integrity that Bart was mentioning and using the front end side, we could certainly do things like, override it and put it here. Of course, then that will change where this document is going to go into our repository. Now, along with the added value of Iris delivering documents into Laserfiche, we can assist with these workflows using any type of conditions. It's really going to be relative to whatever cases you may need, which are going to be unique to your organization. But what the methods that we're going to cover are basically whether or not you want some sort of like algorithms behind it, like Bart was mentioning earlier, mathematical rules, checking whether or not this order number exists in our records. If it does have an order number, then we know we can go ahead and move this over to the approved area as well. You know, all that kind of extra added intelligence can certainly help expedite this part in the front entry into Laserfiche. We could also just leave it for manual approval, like you see I just went ahead and changed. So going from the headers, let's move down into the line items. We see that there is only one. So I'm just going to keep moving through because this document seems fine to me and there's nothing else that I need to worry about. So we're going to just move on into the next document. So in this next document, I'm going to go ahead and check. You'll see that this is green because what we were requiring was just somebody to manually validate the document. I see that everything else looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and change this. In fact, if I do get a situation like this where I'm able to see that there's a different due date, I can quickly click on this button and I'll be able to use my train feature and immediately train. So this will help keep that integrity. So Iris now remembers and learns where the invoice date needs to be and know which one to use. In this case, we have two different line items. As you see, it's really all over the place, but you'll see that Iris was able to capture everything that it needed in the appropriate way. So this document looks fine. And I'm going to go into my third document. You'll notice, you know, Iris has captured everything again, billing, shipping information. We even have some extra charges which were being used for the tax. And again, we also have this area that says approved. That's going to be because this total was under $500, as we discussed before with our business rules. We're going into our line items. Here we hit something that we need to look into. So maybe I need to populate the information here. So what I can do is I could just quickly hit the example, the targeted area that I want. Maybe I want to use my ticket number, and I can populate everything by just the press of a button. Or if I want, just like I did with the invoice date, I can also train that. So by just hitting my little hotkey button that can train, anytime these documents come in now from these Genova vendor, I'll be able to then have this area trained and recognized. So let's see what this second document does when I bring that same document information in. And let me just reset this so you can see. We do see that it is not approved. And then as I reloaded this right back in, you do see that now with each line item, it does use and pick up that ticket number to use for our article number. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and hit yes to these different validation fields that we had set. And we're going to let the system export and commit these documents from our batch over into our repository. So again, we talked about putting things that were approved to go into their approved section. And then we also had our pending area in which things are going to get processed and approved through our workflow. So let's click in, and as you see, Iris has already written everything out. We have our Dell and we have our Genova, okay? And if you see, clicking into it, we'll see all of our data over to the right. Again, this is going to be, this information here can change based off of what it is that you're looking for. I also wanted to just show you, look how our records are coming in as well. So we're able to then put our line items into those records. Another thing, I have a hidden field here that was used from within Iris just so I know when the ingestion date came. Another thing that might be really important is whether or not you want to use tags. Our connector does use tags. So if for whatever reason you did need to have any tags, Iris, the Iris connector can use those tags for you as well. And then let's just take a look over into our pending area where, again, we have our Dell document, which was not approved and pending. And we also then have our other Genova as well. So what we brought over, to recap real quickly with this second demo, Bart, was that we brought over 4 documents. We manually approved one. The other one was already under 500. We brought that on in to the repository because those both were approved. And then the other 2 that were way over $500, we brought right into are pending, in which a simulated Laserfiche workflow would then begin and handle things appropriately. And that concludes my second demo.
Thanks, Sam. Yes, so what you've seen are the two different architectures where I was talking about. You've seen PowerScan, where you saw that when Sam started to import, you really saw document by document coming in. You saw real time that all the indexes were created, filled in. And from there, it was sent to Laserfiche. And in the second, you had the Iris extract, you had the server platform where everything was already upfront captured and just waiting for validation. And as a user, you just get all the information and you start validating. In the second scenario, you can have multiple users working in parallel on multiple batches due to the fact that it's client server. Due to the scalability of the solution behind. What you've also sometimes question is also, yeah, but those documents, what do we have to do before Iris is capable of reading it? You saw a demonstration of invoice processing. Well, for some documents which are often used and which every customer have, we have standard solutions. So what you've seen for invoice processing is a kind of out of the box standard solution. And then if you have your own documents, your own metadata, this is something that we can configure based on your needs very easy, quickly, so that you can process also those documents into the structure that you have inside Laserfiche. I see that we are almost at the end of our seminar. I don't know, Pierrick, were there any questions?
Yes, thank you, Bart, and thank you, Sam, for the great demo. Yes, we have a few questions and a few minutes, so that's fine. So, question from Craig: is there a need to validate all the documents within Iris?
Yeah, I understand the question. The way that we demonstrated it would give the ID that you need to do all the validation, but actually behind every field there will be a validation rule, a business rule, and then it's up to how you would like to organize your workflow. If all the business rules says my data is valid, there is no need to visualize the document. It can be sent immediately to Laserfiche. But again, like I said, this is your choice. If it feels more comfortable just to see, to double check, also this is possible. But there is no need to validate everything if everything is already okay.
Okay, very good. Question from: what are file limitations for this connector?
Sam, I think this is one for you.
So limitations, there really aren't too many limitations. We use, like I mentioned earlier, we do use the Laserfiche SDK to write to Laserfiche server or Laserfiche cloud repositories. However, Iris itself works with documents. So while you can put just about anything you want into your repository, the limitations from Iris entering things over are going to be that images and documents, PDFs, TIFFs, JPEGs. Excel documents, Word files, things like that.
Okay, very good. Question from Jennifer: how does this Laserfiche connector handle file names that already exist?
Good question. So we have a whole array of different ways we can use. It can be based off of index values that we capture, or things that were pulled from your own databases. And we can also use internal Iris tokens as well, things like scan date that I maybe showed earlier. We can use and refine these just about any way you want. So it's highly customizable. And the same can be said about with folders. So if we can write the file that way, we can also make folders or subfolders in your repository using the same methods.
Okay, very good. Let's take a last one from Nicholas. Do I need to buy the Laserfiche SDK in order to use this connector?
No, no, you don't. So all you would need to do if you use Laserfiche is we would install what's called the Laserfiche runtime, the SDK runtime, and that is free. It does not require a Laserfiche license or SDK license.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sam.
Mhm.
Thank you, Bart. We have a few more questions here, but don't worry, those questions will be answered. We will contact you to answer your questions. No problem. Zakaria?
Yes, maybe Bart, you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much all for attending. And as I said earlier at the beginning of the presentation, you will be able to replay the webinar later today on our webpage. And you will find it on our website, irisdatacapture.com/webinars. And please don't forget to register for our next webinar, which will be taking place on the 10th of June, and which will be about the exciting topic of anonymizing data and privacy protection. So thank you all for your participation. Have a nice day and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.